And hello, everybody. Welcome to How Table Talk. It's a special Wednesday edition. Landon right here, Media Director of HowChurch.net. Sitting right here to my right, as always, Pastor KD. How we doing today, sir?
Outstanding.
Outstanding, yes. Mr. Derek Ashcraft to my left, everybody. How are we today, sir?
Wonderful.
Wonderful. All right, and that doesn't even sound that embellished, okay? So there we go.
No, it's real.
Yeah, the reason I say embellished, folks, is because we all know what yesterday was, and a lot of people are freaking out a little bit. But hey, it's okay. Calm down. If you went and voted, you've already done all you can do. Now all there is to do is pray. So let's just put all that on the back burner. Let's forget about that stuff. Fellas, today I wanted to do kind of just like an open conversation type episode. Me and Brother Derek were talking this morning, Pastor, and we were talking about, first of all, last Sunday was, man, that was a win right there. That was a big win. Why don't you do the honor? Tell everybody the stats from last Sunday.
Oh, I just think that God moved in and we had a wonderful time, and the worship team really led us in a preparation for God doing some incredible things, and we just had people wanted to be part of us, join. We had a person saved, and we got to baptize some people, and we know it's all God, but He uses us, and if we stay clean and pure. And it was just an awesome, incredible day, and I was real thankful about that.
Absolutely, yes, sir. It's not all about numbers and stats, but when the numbers are high, it just feels a little cooler.
Well, you talk about numbers, and we didn't plan to talk about any of this kind of stuff like that. But I'll say this: first of all, the table was a little crooked, and I had to.
You go right on ahead, sir.
No, I'm just picking this. But people talk about numbers and stuff, and they go, "Well, it's not about numbers," and we know what we mean. But behind every number, there's a soul. So I can't count spirits, and we can't see spirits, but we can see bodies. And so sometimes, we're good at counting, and it's easy to count people. We have to count something. And so, but behind every soul, there's a number. There's a book of Numbers. There was 3,000 saved in the Bible, 5,000 saved. So somebody thought it was important enough through the leadership of the Holy Spirit to keep up with the numbers. But we're just excited about people in general finding the Lord, and it's just awesome. It really is to be part of something live.
And I think it's no coincidence that, today and yesterday and probably for the next couple of days, everyone's obsessed over statistics. And this past Sunday, we got to see God move through statistics. We got to see Him basically say, yeah, I do care about numbers, these numbers, not those other ones. That's whatever. Anyways, so, Brother Derek, earlier, if you recall, sir, we said, with all these new people coming into the church and all that, man, you remember that old classic stereotype of, well, I'm saved and I'm a Christian, so, well, there goes the fun,
Yeah, now I'm boring.
Yeah, now it's time to live by a very strict guideline, a dress code for life, if you will. And that's the idea everyone has in their head. And, I mean, well, it's got to be a stereotype for a reason. There's got to be something throughout history that, most people have dubbed it with. But that's kind of what we're here to start on today, folks, is we're going to chisel away at a few key Christian life cliches, if you will, or stereotypes. So that first one, giving up all the fun. Why don't we start there? Derek, you kind of put it best. When you do make that life choice, what are you really giving up, though? Are you giving up fun? But what are you really giving up?
Nothing.
Okay, see, look, that right
you
there.
You can have just as much fun.
Yeah.
If not more. I think so.
Yeah.
Elaborate, please.
Well, I have fun every Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Because nothing feels better than to worship.
Yeah, and worship corporately. And I would just say this, when you're talking about fun, and you think you're having fun if people are really serious before they meet Christ. The truth is, it is fun. It's exciting when you do things that aren't Christ-like out in the world, and just we can identify with maybe drinking or doping or doing some other bad things. It's not just those things, but other bad things, and it's fun for a season. So we can't tell people it's not fun, because it is fun, but in our hearts we know there's a hole, there's an emptiness there.
Yeah. It's temporary.
Yeah, and it's temporary. And so you wake up the next morning, you go, well, that was a good time, but still something's missing. But when you meet Christ,
It's a lifetime.
Yeah, and it's a true joy, because when you do things, you just feel God's presence. You feel His real joy. You wake up, you don't have some vomit next to you. You don't.
That's
have
always a plus.
Yeah, you don't have a hangover. And then you just know whatever you did, if it was right, you just knew it was it was lasting, and it was real joy and not just happiness. Happiness depends upon the happenings, but you can have joy when everything's not going right. So when you talk about fun and the fun's over, to me, the real fun just started when I met Christ.
Yeah, and a lot of that it's very age specific. So like in the teenage years and young adult years, believe you me, it can be kind of a less attractive idea because, well, one, that's what everyone else is doing, and what they all say, well, who cares what everyone else is doing, and that's true. But I think a lot of people don't like the idea of being an outcast. You're not really an outcast. You have a church family and you have other people like that too. You just got to find them. But when you're a younger teenager, like let's say 15 or whatever, you're still a ways from being able to drive and all that. Well, I mean, yeah, you feel kind of powerless, and it is pretty easy to kind of get that locked in your head. But like you guys said, is we think one thing at a certain point in life, and what I've noticed is that you feel so bad when you do start turning away and go into the quote unquote fun, with a little bit of liquid entertainment, if you will, and all that. And when you do start to grow up a year or two later, then you feel so bad and so guilty about it, and then it's almost like you got to stick to your guns now to keep from looking stupid. Nobody likes to be told, "I told you so." So then it almost becomes an act of, no, yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I don't have any regrets, and you're full of them, but you don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to want to fit in because peer pressure is very real. But yeah, that stuff is short-lived, and you feel it the next day, and you know it's wrong, whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah, and then we all want to be accepted. Let's just be honest. Nobody wants to say, I have no friends, no one loves me, no one cares for me. But if we aren't careful, when we have all these people around us, we walk away sometimes after them being around us and we go, they don't really like me, maybe. They don't really care about me. They don't really have my best interest, and so when we're around them, you can be surrounded with people and still be lonely. So we just want to be accepted. We want to be loved. And that's the thing about Christ. Sinners loved him. It was the religious people, that hated him. They had their standard that they had for God, and they thought God should have been this, and God's like, I love everybody. I may not love what you do. I may not love how you act, but I love you, and nothing's going to change that. And I think they know that he was authentic because he was, but they felt that authenticity and that genuineness and that true love. And so they had fun around him. I know he went to parties. Now, I don't know if it was the parties like we would describe today, but he went to parties and they had fun. And I don't think heaven's going to be like us sitting around like a bunch of wooden Indians.
No.
I mean, according to what I see, that is the ultimate Super Bowl for the Christians, to be with God forever, worshiping him.
And that's another thing. So you say when we get to heaven, that's all we're going to be doing is worship. Well, I think, actually, I don't think, I remember this clearly. When I was a kid and I heard the preacher say that, I'm like, so you're telling me that we're going to just be in church forever? I mean, the door is welded shut. We are in church for eternity. That sounds exhausting, actually. But like we've said in the past 2 episodes, folks, if you haven't seen those, check them out. They're pretty good. We talked about what is worship, and we've nailed down that it's not just, singing all together in unison. That there's all ways to worship. So I feel like, we will be worshiping him as a sense of, that's kind of that coming home moment of saying thank you, but we kind of truly become part of God.
Yeah,
we're part of that essence.
Yeah. And the thing about it, worship's on the inside. So if you're just going to church and you have no desire to meet God and you truly not worshiping God, I'll be honest with you, church is boring. But we don't try to teach you how to do church. We try to teach you how to have a relationship, and that is the difference. And I do reciprocate with you. I do. I mean, I do understand what you're saying. When you look at heaven as a young person, it's like you look around and you're like, well, if this is heaven,
I'm pretty much here now.
We're fighting at business. I'm talking about when I'm a kid. We're fighting in business meetings. Nobody likes each other, and maybe Sister Sally can't sing, and Brother Keith can't preach. And if this is heaven, I don't know if I want to go. But heaven's about Jesus, and it's about joy, and it's about, thank God, no more pain, no more elections, no more any of that. Just it's Jesus is heaven, and I've described this to Derek, to Landon more than one time. I said, heaven to me, really, sincerely, is Jesus Christ, number one. And number two, it is no electronic equipment.
Zero.
I agree.
No computer.
None.
I am so tired of trying to worship and something a buzz goes off, a light comes off. It's just crazy.
That's
crazy.
the most distracting thing we have.
Yes, it is.
And side note, quick side thing there. For all you people that are involved with your church and maybe help with the electronics and stuff, you know exactly what we're talking about. But I think when everyone's on the same page, worship-wise, the worship team, the volunteers, the directors, God bless their souls, and all that, I think that we all get it. Like we don't notice it because, well, one, it's just being a professional musician. You learn to move past that. But also it's because we know it doesn't matter. I mean, we know we're up there to worship and nothing else. Yeah, the only reason that scares me, I know it's not going to mess them up because that's not what they're up there for. They're up there to worship. It scares me about the people in the crowd that maybe are not that comfortable, maybe not that used to church. That first-time person that's going out on a limb and trying it. That's all it takes to turn their attention span off. But then you got your members that come every Sunday and love it. It's not going to bother them either. But it's that one.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that one.
Right.
I could keep 99 of them, but I'm still going to stress over losing that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, folks. At the end of the day, your worship team and all that. When we have tech issues in the church, when we're trying to do, have our version of fun, if you will, it's not your team that's going to suffer. It's always that one. So that's an interesting little nugget there. We can put that in the back pocket for a future talk.
I feel like a lot of people are worried about judgment.
Yeah.
To be a Christian, like for me, it has nothing to do with age, but as you grow towards God, then it's easy to look back on your life and you can see who your friends were, the people that cared about you, the people that were leading you in the right direction, despite how it felt at the time.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point is, Derek, we grow in God, and when we first started our walk with God, there was very little judgment because we were just so in love with Him, and He was in love with us, and we saw people through different eyes. But then as we grow, we find out there's different levels of maturity. And because I'm here, I don't need to look back and condemn who's not where I am. It's not I'm superior. I've just grown a little bit. And now that I've grown a little bit, I need to be more patient. I need to be wise and realize, I should have grown. I've been doing this 31 years, but they've been saved a year. And if we're not careful, we'll just choke them down. We'll want them to eat steak and understand they're on milk. And that's a biblical deal that Paul talked about. And so I just think, you're talking about stereotypes. I just think that we got to be careful to realize that not everybody is where we are, and we're patient and we're gentle, but we challenge each other. We don't let us stay stagnant. We challenge each other and keep helping each other grow forward. It's not being accepted. I'm accepting all your sin, and for the real legalistic people, well, you're accepting all their sin, and no, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, some of these things are wrong. Just like where you are, there's some things you're doing that's wrong. And let's pray, forgive, and move and grow together. I'll forgive you. You forgive me. I'll work through my stuff. You work through your stuff. You help me work through my stuff, and I'll help you work through your stuff. Yeah. Of course, under the leadership of God.
Continuing forward.
Right.
Always,
Yeah.
And I've noticed, not trying to generalize anybody, but like with that older generation, like my grandparents and all that, it felt like like being in grade school and just like, oh, I'm telling the preacher on you. You know, it's like they would go and like my grandma, a lot of people of that generation, they smoked cigarettes because way back then, before we knew it was that big a deal, it's just something you did. And then so she was a big cigarette smoker. She would have her select spots because she didn't want anybody from the church seeing her buy them. Now, of course, it's probably pretty obvious when you smoke that long, you can just smell them. But still, didn't want. I mean, just paranoid almost. I've had preachers in the past. They were so paranoid, even though they didn't smoke. Like there was, I had an old preacher that he helped some guy load something in his truck or change a tire or something in the Walmart parking lot, or the guy had helped him. And he said, "Do I owe you anything, man?" And he goes, "Well, if you could just buy me a pack of Marlboros and we can call it even." And he goes, "Well, I'm a preacher. I can't be seen buying that. Here's $10." And and I'm like, I mean, why? So just like all of these unspoken rules kind of that linger around. I feel like they were more strict back then, but now I've kind of noticed, the grip is starting to ease up a little bit. I'm not saying people just don't give a care at all, but it's almost like, it's becoming more of a team, like a football or baseball team. If I have a teammate that's struggling, I'm going to work with them, and if I do tell on them, it's not to get them kicked off. It's being like, hey, you might want to, offer some of this to this guy. It's all good-natured.
Yeah, I think when you get so far on your path, then you don't worry about all that stuff anymore. And then when you feel good and you're on the right path, then you want to help the people around you.
And I would agree. And let's talk about, we're talking about stereotypes. Staying on that subject is that, you got the older and the younger, and as a pastor and as a Christian, and I'm going to try to make this short, is that you're thinking that the older people are holding you back, and then the older people could be thinking that the younger people are trying to run off and leave them. And I think both are true out of ignorance. It's not maybe intentional, but the younger people sometimes feel impeded, that we can't go forward because of the stereotypes that we're not being Christian if we, have some haze or we have some lights or if we have contemporary. But I want to say something to all of us who are younger, too, is that we forget that it's the older people, the senior people that has gotten us to where we are. Thank God they had a standard, and they still do have a standard, and they were our anchor, and they brought us this far. And there is the Gaither reunion, and I won't go through all that. But the point I'm making is that Gaither brought all the young singers around. Okay, now watch this. And then he put the two older people who had been singing for years, put them in wingback chairs, honored them. So now you got the younger standing around honoring these people who got the younger people this far, and then the olders are singing with the younger people, and it's showing, hey, we can all do this together. I want my kids, and I want the church, the kids of this church, I want them to go, our pastor was not a compromiser. He wasn't trying to be like the world or act like the world, but he loved us, and he wanted the best for us. And boy, he was strong, and he made some standards, but he never impeded us from being who God created us to be, and he never tried to stop us from growing and being relevant to our generation. That's a big word. So that stereotype, the olders, you can't do anything, and these youngers want to go off and leave us, or these young people want to go off and leave us. I think that's a big deal in church, and I'm so glad. I want to say this. I'm so glad our church, we're not perfect. We're not trying to act like we're perfect, but I can tell you some of the senior people in this church, Miss Bernice, that's my hero. She's like 80-something years old. You know where she works? She doesn't pass out bulletins. That's big, and that's huge. That's just as big as me preaching. She's in there with the preschool on the floor playing with the bed babies. I mean, she could easily say, I'm retired. So you got to watch how you stereotype people, because she's a model.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I think that when it does become that when there's a clear line in the sand drawn, well, then we're invoking conflict, and that is not of God. So, if it's going to cause any kind of conflict, well, then right there we know we've gotten off track. I think that the concepts of how things should run, when everybody agrees on the concept because of what we've read in the Bible and we create those standards, well, then, by trying to, again, change it up too much or whatever, and you're invoking conflict, I think God designed it all to where there is no conflict because we're all doing it anyway. We're all doing the same.
And the Pharisees, here's was the law, the Jewish law. They had hundreds of additional addendums, if you will, attachments that, this is the law, but this, and Jesus said, I didn't say all that.
Yeah.
God's like, I didn't write all that. But it was the commandments of men
Yes.
that was keeping the people from being free. Not free to do what you want, but free to do what you ought.
Yeah, I was also, I just thought when you were talking about how earlier your style of how you run the church is, yes, you do have standards, but you're not going to impede or anything like that. But the first thing you said, yes, there are standards. That right there, the older people have laid the foundation. I feel like by sticking to it too hard, well, then we can't grow because we've already been there. But I feel like by going too far the other way, well, now you've made it about you as a man, and it's no longer God's house; it's Keith Dickens' business.
Right, and this is a key point though on that is methodology is going to change if you're going to try to be relevant to your culture. Jesus talked to the farmers about seed. He was always a pitcher. He always gave a picture in the theater of everybody's mind. He talked to the fishermen about fish. So, he didn't talk to the fishermen about planting something or the farmers about fishing. He was always so methodology is always going to change. At one time, if you brought a piano in church years past, you done brought the boogie woogie boogie into the church now, and then they got okay with that. Then you brought a guitar. Now you bringing Van Halen into the church, And what I'm getting at, theology, I'm going to never compromise on to win anybody.
Yeah.
But that's truth. You got to have love because truth without love is brutal. And love without truth is hypocrisy. So the methodology is going to change, but the theology stays. The methodology can vary, but the theology standards got to be there. So I'm not going to try to go sin with you to say, hey man, Jesus loves you. Let's go. We always use drinking. I don't know why, because there's envy, there's pride, there's so many sins of the flesh that we as Christian people do. We don't maybe drink and all that other outside stuff that we condemn everybody for. But boy, we're meaner than a junkyard dog and jealous and envy and hateful sometimes. But what I'm getting at is I'm not going to go sit down and drink a case of beer with you and say, man, isn't Jesus good? I just want to win you to the Lord, or sit there and be ugly and try to win them to the Lord. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I can't sin to win you, but I can love you through your sin and not condemn you in your sin.
Absolutely. That's always the great question is how do we love those people without, I hate using this word, it sounds kind of harsh, but Bible beater. I don't want to get beat over the head with the Bible. And also, and I've tried before, just like you said, like, hey man, I still love you and all that. Well, what's that supposed to mean? I mean, you think you're up here and I'm down here. So that's always, folks, sometimes it's just not possible on our end. All we can do is just give it over to that end up there and leave it at that. But that was a great point. We love them through it, But don't be surprised if they still take that love as offense, because that's just where they're at the time.
I wanted to go back to what you said about ignorance. I think that's a huge hurdle for us. Because, ignorance, if that's the lack of knowledge.
That's right.
Well, when you have no knowledge, then you don't pursue the knowledge that you need.
Right.
So you have to almost be extra communicative to get that.
Yeah.
And like with change is one of the only constants in our world.
That's right.
It's never going to stop.
No.
So you have to adapt and grow and constantly change what you're doing.
Right.
To continue your journey the best way you can with what you have already.
Yeah, and to wed the two thoughts that y'all both have together, the way I'd say it, and I've said it, real redundant with my preaching because we learn through redundancy. But you don't scold a blind man because he can't see. And so how do I win people? If I know a person's lost, and I'm trying to break down 66 books of the Bible and tell them how bad she is. The Bible says a wise man winneth souls. I'm just going to love on you. I get around even my family. I don't even talk about the Bible because I think it's more caught than taught when it comes to sinners. And so you got to teach it. But what I'm saying, my lifestyle is going to open a door so that the Holy Spirit can sow a seed in their life. And so, if I know, let's say Derek's lost, I'm not going to condemn him if he's doing anything. But if he says, hey, you want to do what I'm doing? I'm like, no, bro, I'm not going to say, no, because Jesus saved my soul, and he can save your soul, and you're going to die and go to hell if you don't change right now, and you're not going to try to get me. I'm not going to get all drama.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say no. But if he pursues the question, then I'll go, well, I'm just a Christian. I don't do those things.
Yeah.
I'm no better than you. I just don't do those things.
Right. Yeah. That makes me think of that saying that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right.
You can tell somebody and you can show them and they can see it, but until they're ready to make that decision, they're not going to.
That's right. That's right. And that's even like with addictions. I mean, you can't want for someone. You can do everything you want. But so I just want to be clear that, and then here's another stereotype that I get played on me, and I'd like to, y'all didn't know I was going to bring this up, but man, you a preacher and you do this.
I bet you hear
are,
that.
Oh Lord, it's like even like when because you're a pastor, it doesn't mean you're not human. It doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean by the way, you don't have feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, there ought to be a higher standard, but there's a higher standard for all of us. It's not just, for instance, if I did some things that Christians did, they'd be like, or not Christians, I'm a Christian, but some things that other Christians do, they'd be like, I can't believe he's a pastor that's doing what we're doing. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, if it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah.
They make it different.
Yeah, they make it different. Like, so, but, because a pastor preaches doesn't mean he doesn't understand anything about business. It doesn't mean he doesn't understand anything about music. It doesn't mean he doesn't understand anything about medicine. It just means that God's called him to preach. So, preachers, they're bad preachers. I get it. I get it. They're bad, everybody, bad mechanics, bad. But we don't just quit going to all the auto shops because there's one bad mechanic or 10 of them.
Absolutely.
But we get stereotyped a lot, and rightly so many times. But a lot of times you're guilty before proven innocent on things. You really are. So, preachers are human is what I'm saying. And it's not an alibi or justification. It's just saying, hey, we're human too. And we want to be loved. We want to be accepted.
Absolutely. It's just one of those things that, at the end of the day, like you said, we're all human, but taking the path of being a pastor, of course you're going to stumble a few times. And I just think that people, a lot of times the reason for that comes from because people, when they're trying to get right with God or foster that good relationship, they're relying on the pastor so much, like you're the mouthpiece, and they're relying on it so much that it's like when you're a little kid and you realize that your favorite TV show is just a show and it's not real, like when you do see that little chink in the pastor's armor, you're like, no, But then that leads to, we're tying all those feelings up into a man and not what the man's trying to tell us about.
Yeah.
So, every career path, or I'm not just going to call it a career path, but every path we choose, you choosing the path of a pastor, it's got its own hurdles. So when we see a pastor stumble on those hurdles, we don't say, well, he's not really a pastor anymore. It's, hey, well, he signed up for that, and it looks like he's jumping over it pretty well, so let's cheer him on.
Yeah, and one last thing before I'm not trying to be self-serving here, but what I would say to they said that there was no greater leader, no greater pastor, no greater friend. God Himself was called Satan. He was called the devil. He was called a liar. He was, and you just hear stereotypes that that people give, and it's like, because Christians and pastors fail, they're not hypocrites. Just because, they're not, they made mistakes. They've messed up, kind of like what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so you got to be careful when you get this measurement out, this yardstick, and you start measuring all these preachers and Christians, and because that when I find out that stick, that measuring stick, turns into a boomerang, and it hits them right between the eyes, because the same measure you measure in other people, it has a way of coming right back and hitting you right between the eyes. Have you ever heard somebody say this? I would never raise my kids like this. I would never do that.
So often.
And 2 weeks later, it's like, we got a problem here, you
Yeah.
know. So
And isn't it? I mean, I think it's no coincidence the people that say that are the ones like me with no kids, or wife for that matter, or anything. Well, I'm not doing it that way. Well, how many have you raised so far? Tell me. Yes, tell me. Well, anyways, folks, we're just about out of time. That's going to do it for this week. Thank you to everyone for all the continued support. We thank you so much for all the likes, shares, the views. Remember, you can find us on Spotify and Google Podcast if you want to go audio only. Plug it into the aux cord in the car. And if you like me and you like to turn that phone sideways and get the little home theater set up going, we're on Facebook and YouTube. Come by and see us one Sunday, okay? 9 o'clock and 10:30, 2720 Highway 28 East in Pineville, Louisiana. That's Heart of Worship. Or if you look at our beautiful state-of-the-art sign, howchurch.net. Pastor, any closing thoughts?
no, we'd love to have them. And when you come here, you're not going to find a perfect church, but you're going to find some people that really love you and just trying to live for Jesus the best we all can. Amen. They can and I can. And so I'm excited about it, what the future holds.
Yes, sir. Nobody knows, but we're all in this thing together.
Yeah. And we're fun.
Yeah, we are fun. Thank you, Derek. That's a perfect way to end
With
that.
no hangover and a little money at the end of the day.
Yeah. Ain't it great how that works out? All right, folks, have a blessed rest of the week. Keep up with us on the socials, and we'll see you next time.